First and finest, National American Indian Heritage Month recognizes American Indians for their respect for natural resources and the earth, having served with valor in our nation's conflicts and for their many distinct and important contributions to the United States. American Indians and Alaska Natives served in overwhelming numbers after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. For their service, they earned many distinguished medals and honors, including Purple Hearts, Distinguished Flying Crosses, Bronze Stars, Silver Stars, Air Medals, Distinguished Service Crosses, and 3 Congressional Medals of Honor. In addition to the large number of men who took part in the war, there were many Native American women who served in the armed forces as members of the WAVES, Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Services, WACS, Women Army Corps, and Army Nurse Corps. Today, the spirit and many contributions of American Indians and Alaska Natives continue to enrich our communities and strengthen our country. Here at Naval Medical Center Portsmouth, we recognize these contributions to both the Navy and to our staff. Recently, Miss Laura Williams, the IMD Management Assistant here at NMCP, conducted an interview with Adrienne Vaughn, a retired Army combat medic and a member of the Apache tribe, about her time in the military as an American Native.
If you could tell us about yourself and your background a little bit.
Sure. My name is Adrienne Celeste Vaughn. I am a full-blooded member of the San Carlos Apache tribe. I was born and raised in San Carlos, Arizona. I enlisted in the United States Army when I turned 18 back in 1992. That's a while back. My initial enlistment, I entered as a 95 Bravo, which is a military police. So I've done 5 years as an MP. I've been to Fort Clayton, Panama. I've been to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and then I was stationed with the 1st Infantry Division in Germany. I did ETS, and then I went to college for a bit, but my husband was still active duty, so then I went ahead and re-enlisted. Actually, I got the letter from Uncle Sam when 9/11 happened, and they were calling me back to active duty. And I decided that I didn't really want to come back as an MP, so I decided that let me look at other options, and I was able to talk to a recruiter, and I came back in as a 68 Whiskey healthcare specialist / combat medic, which is important later on. But I decided to be a medic, came back in. I did 20 years as a combat medic. I've had a couple of deployments under my belt. Currently still married with my husband. We've been married as young privates for about 27 years, break in service. But he's currently going to retire next year. He is attached out of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and he's part of the military police schoolhouse there, and he's going to retire as a sergeant major. And I have one daughter. We retired out of Florida, or out of Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I currently live in Newport Richey, Tampa, Florida.
Thank you for your service, for both of you.
Oh, thank you. I always get the compliments, but I think most of the time they direct it toward my husband, because we say military, and they're like, oh. Then, of course, he's always proud to say, oh, my wife served also. So, I'm kind of that wallflower in the back, but I enjoy it all. So,
what does Native American heritage mean to you, and how does it empower you in everyday life and definitely life challenges?
Well, I think growing up, I lived on an Indian reservation, so I was surrounded by my people. So I never really paid attention to being, I guess, Native, because it was just who we are, how we lived. And when I joined the military service, it was kind of like a novelty. Everybody's like, oh, we got a Native American. And then I get hit with all these questions of, do you still live in a teepee? Do you ride a horse? Do you hunt for your food? And it's like kind of getting back out there into, I guess, outside the reservation, outside the state, and, going to basic training, AIT, meeting a whole different group of people. It really made me proud of who I was. Proud of where I came from, and just proud of my whole history. So then after a while, I realized a lot of people didn't understand or know a lot about Native Americans. So then I took it upon myself to kind of explain, take the joking part out of it, but just tell them, this is what we do, this is how we live, this is where a majority of us are, and how we assimilate into just the modern society, and of course in the 21st century. And after that, I just realized I took a big impact of how I presented myself to everyone else. I wasn't coming out with dominance and aggression saying, I am Native American and this is who I am and accept me. It was pretty much, well, this is who I am. There's a whole diverse community out there, and the military is always great about breaking in that barrier and, you know, getting everybody together and wear that one color of green. So I really take a great pride in my heritage. You know, I try to educate others. I don't force it down anybody's agenda on like, this is, you know, what should be done, this is what should be said. I let them come to me and I share what I have. And I think overall, I think I've made some impact on some people's perception of what Native American and the heritage that we all have somewhere in our history.
How has the Apache culture in specific and the heritage influenced and motivated you in life, and in particularly in your military career?
Well, I think just the history of the Apaches. You know, when you think about Apaches, everybody thinks about Geronimo, everybody thinks about the war parties and the raiding parties and how such a militant group we were. Yes, we come from a warrior society, but at the same time, a lot of ours is matriarchal. So we have a lot of women in our families that are just the strong Native American woman that takes care of her family and takes care of, you know, not only just the immediate members, but everyone. You know, we take care of everyone. We're long living, long history of just being alive and being here. Everybody thought that we had slowly faded out or we're no longer a viable tribe, but just being Apache. In my military career, I've come across some people that are like, oh, you're Native American, so maybe you should be our point man, or you should be our tracker, or here, let's hear your war cry. And sometimes it's all in good fun. And I'm right there along with them joking, but sometimes I let them know, it's like, well, no, that's not really going to do it. And you really don't want to hear my war cry because that'll probably be the last thing you hear. And, you know, it kind of tones it down a little, but it jokes, but it gives me a sense of pride. When I'm in the service, I know that we've come from a long warrior society. So I do have family members that were in the military. And just to have that shared history, and then going home and talking to the members and talking to our elders, talking to the veterans, and just exchanging stories. You know, there's probably things that they don't tell their family, but when I'm with them, we talk and it's a general discussion. We laugh, we joke, and it makes me proud to be part of that, not only in just being a veteran in the United States of America, but being a veteran in my tribe. So it's a big influence. I want to say Apache is a big word to live up to, but I think I try to carry it well. And I always give you that strong representation of who my tribe is.
Definitely. No, I remember your leadership. You were very strong and strict, but in a very respectful way. And I'm looking up to you a lot as a woman and as a service member as well.
Thank you.
So you're a soldier, you're a medic, and a leader. How did your heritage set you apart in those functions? Did it ever feel like an obstacle?
When I first joined the military service, you know, I read a lot about our history of our people and how we went into battle and how we presented ourselves, and just other histories like the code talkers. When I first joined the service, I think it was one of my elder grandmothers. She had grown up when the reservation had first came established, and she was kind of a little disappointed and wanting to know why I wanted to join the service. And she's like, why are you going to join? It was the US soldiers that put us on the reservation. It's the soldiers that captured us and brought us, and this is why we're here. But, you know, I talked to her and I told her, we're always going to be part of America. This is who I am. I'm an American. I may be Native in blood, but I'm an American. And I want to fight, and I don't want to fight wars, but I want to defend my country if it comes down to what's going to happen and what's going on in our life. And it gives me an opportunity to go out and see the world, experience everything that I know that my small town, my small reservation, even my small state of Arizona couldn't provide what I wanted, which was life experience. And I think being a soldier, that was kind of a hindrance for the women in my family, because it wasn't something that they thought would carry me far. But it was always the men, my grandfather, my uncles, my father himself. They were really proud, and they're like, well, carry on tradition. You know, there's not always going to be a male in our family that's going to be joining the service, but you'll be able to come back and help and, you know, be a resource for them. And just being a medic and being a soldier, in itself is kind of hard, because you go through and you see a lot of different things that a lot of regular soldiers probably won't be part of or see. Just being on the receiving end of being a medic, when I go home to the reservation, everybody thinks that I'm a doctor or a nurse, or they think that I'm a medicine woman. But I tell them, no, I'm a healthcare specialist. You know, I'm there to take care of the troops and for the troops. You know, I'm there to make sure that their well-being, who they are as a soldier, and to get them back into the fighting force. You know, I'm not performing miracles. I'm not doing open surgery. It's not like on TV, but it's never really been an obstacle. It's never been a hindrance, just that initial enlistment that caught everyone by surprise. And then after that, I hit the ground running and took it in great strides. So I always think of it as one of my greatest accomplishments, is being a soldier.
How do you feel like we as a nation could better celebrate Native American heritage and the tremendous legacy that's there?
I think that's a really hard question to address, because I think a lot we've come forward by leaps and bounds. We've progressed and we've got the recognition. I think sometimes that mainstream America, or even just the rest of the world, doesn't realize we're still here. We're not assimilated, or we're not as faded out as a lot of people realize. You'll meet a lot of people, and there could be someone that you work with, someone that you know, a friend of a friend, that has Native American blood, but they're not going to be raised on a reservation, or they're not going to be raised in a home nucleus environment of being immersed in, I guess, living full Native life. But as a nation, I think when we celebrate it, a lot of times it's in the month of November. And I think it's kind of interesting how we follow on Thanksgiving, because, you know, they always say we saved the pilgrims, but did we? Or, you know, it was sharing. And then, of course, you know, a lot of times people come about and they talk about they want to get rid of Columbus Day and call it Indigenous Day. I guess it all goes by how people feel in the region that they grew up in and how they were treated as a people. I enjoy it because being in the military, we acknowledge Native Americans, and it makes me feel proud that, you know, oh, well, they've taken that step further in the government, they've taken that step further in the military, and you'll get that recognition, and you'll get that moment of like, this is who I am, and this is what I become in society and in life. And I'm willing to share that information with anybody. Like today, you know, just asking and talking to you, it makes me feel proud. So I think just getting that information out there to the rest of society, to the rest of the world, realizing that we are still part of America, still part of society. We may have our own little sovereign nation, we may all have our own little family nucleus, but just the recognition itself, I think, is valuable. And it'll be something I'll pass on to my daughter and realize this is who you are and this is where you come from, so that she won't forget. And I know, coming from the women in our tribe, it's a very important value to have.
For those who don't know much about Native Americans and the history and the legacy, or haven't really come across, but then what are some things that they should be aware of in the workplace, in school, as these?
I know, like, just thinking about that, there's a lot of things that people, when I first joined, a lot of people didn't know who we are and what type of lifestyle we had. So of course, you know, I got the questions, do I still live in a teepee? Do I ride a horse? Do we have running water? Like, you know, the questions as they come along, you realize they're asking and they sound like silly questions, or, you know, there's never a stupid question, but it's just like things that, like, no, I live in a house, I drive a car. We're regular mainstream. We may not be living large and having lots of money from casinos, but we still have enough to financially take care of ourselves and our young, you know, our young people and our young tribal members. I know in the military, they talk about being politically correct, and they talk about making comments and equal opportunity and, you know, sexual harassment and stuff like that. And it was always just an issue sometimes if I caught somebody saying something, and sometimes they don't know, and they'll just say like, hey, chief, or walking by and doing that little Native American, I guess, tomahawk chop call sign or whatever you want to do. And I stop and I tell them, hey, that's not cool. Hey, or hey, I really appreciate it if you wouldn't make that sound, or would you make that comment? And I usually call it out. And I found the best way to approach someone is to be direct, and say, I don't like the way this was presented to me. Could you not do that again? And of course, it always comes across, and most of the time they just said no. They're like, oh, I thought I'm sorry, I didn't realize. And apology is always accepted, unless it's something that's so dire that I've never come across it, but, just, I don't want it to be offensive. But I also want them to be appreciative and, of course, respectful when it comes to Native American history, to powwows, to just the significance. I know a lot of people carry their dog tags and they carry like the Christianity and their cross. I always carry my eagle feather with me. So, I've had chain of command. I was really respectful of that. And I told them, just like everyone has a religious medallion, something sacred to them, this is sacred to me. And I've gotten that respect back. And just them not knowing what it was or what it meant to me and just explaining. So, a lot of times natives will come forward and tell you, well, I don't appreciate this, or I don't find this, humorous, or this is offensive. So a lot of times people they just don't know. So you have to actually sit back and educate them.
What are some of your favorite traditions?
As being a St. Carlos Apache, there's a celebration that we do, and we always take pride in it, and we always present it to our young in our family. When a young woman or a young girl has entered into her rites of passage and she has come into being a young woman, we celebrate, because this is a powerful person. This is a powerful moment in a woman's life or young girl's life. So we do a celebration. We call it a sunrise dance. It's a puberty rite. So we do the celebrations, and we do, it's 4 days. Everything in the traditions of Apache is always 4. So we do the first day where she is dressed by a godmother. So when this happens, you go out and you find a set of godparents that you believe would raise your child in the right and proper way of being Apache and sharing knowledge. Is this person wholesome? Is this person approachable, friendly? Not so much as wealth or prestige or status. It's if this person is a good person that you want as a member of your family for your daughter. So when they pick a set of godparents, it's a huge honor, and it's amazing. And we celebrate. We do the dressing where she's dressed in her traditional regalia. On day 2, she is molded and massaged by her godmother into a beautiful young woman. And you see that transition from this girl that goes into the ceremony, young, frightened, and probably feeling alone and scared. But as we do the traditions, we explain it. And we always have a medicine man that explains, this is why we do this. This is why it's like this. And you see the knowledge, and you see the information being absorbed, and you see just that transition of being a young, scared girl, realizing that you have responsibilities as a woman that we are presenting to you. And we do the celebrations. And then we also have the things we call the crown dancers, the gone dancers. And they come in and they bless us. They're like persons that are intermediate between us and the creator. So we dance and we sing and we pray, and they hear our message, they hear our prayers, and they dance and sing for us and present it to our creator. And when it comes for the young girl, she's a powerful woman. So she has this ability to heal. And it's our belief. She is woman. The greatest reincarnation you can ever think of is a young girl that turns into a woman. And on the 3rd day, then she is presented with her godfather, and he presents her to the world saying that this is my daughter, this is who I'm going to raise. And he paints her way through life. And it's symbolic because he does this, it's a mixture of clay, corn, and water, and prays, and sprinkles the ground. And wherever she walks, he sprinkles the ground and sprinkles the air, and he praises the way that she's going to walk through life. And it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And then on the 4th day, we come to the end where we complete the ceremony, we complete our prayers, and we start breaking down the camp that we set up for 4 days. Once the medicine man has left, then of course at that point we realize, okay, it's a 4-day celebration, but it's a 4-day ceremony that we present. And just being the part of that, it's been around for so long and it's been so secretive. It wasn't until the 1970s that we were actually allowed to celebrate our religion. it was until the 1940s that we weren't considered American citizens. So just having that and having to hide your traditions, hide your culture, and not being ripped away and not being stripped down and torn apart, just to have still that ceremonies that they did early way back in the 1800s, 1700s, and still celebrate that today. I think that is phenomenal. And it's my favorite tradition because I had that ceremony done as a child. My daughter just last year had that ceremony done. We went and found godparents for her and we did the ceremony. And then my husband and myself, of course, were chosen as godparents twice, and the magic number is 4. Everything's always 4 at Apache, but we were selected twice and it's an honor. We're really, really proud of our goddaughters. I have 2 of them and one lives in California and one lives in St. Carlos or Phoenix, Arizona. And then of course, my daughter has her godparents in Arizona. It's kind of hard traveling back and forth through the military. Everywhere you go, everything you do, you always go home to regroup. And no matter whose ceremony it is, a relative's daughter, a cousin's daughter, my sister's daughter is going to be coming up probably in the next couple of years. I always go home and it's a refresher course, I guess you could say. And we always feel re-energized, reconnected with our heritage, our traditions. And I think for me, that's my most favorite ever. You go home, you see family. You always say you go home when you see a birth of a family member or a death of a family member. But we always go home whenever there's a ceremony or even just you're not maybe related to someone that's having it done, but the ceremony itself is welcome to everyone. So you go home and refresh and regroup, and there's no boundaries, there's no time, and you see everybody. My husband goes home and I said, just everybody outside this camp is related to you. And he's like, well, how? And I was like, well, through clan, through family, and just being a tribal member or being married to a tribal member.
There's no place like home.
No, there isn't.
And the ceremony sounds very powerful. And
it is. It's very, very spiritual.
Definitely a big step. What is one of your most influential experience or teaching in your childhood or as you were growing up? I
think again, it goes back to the sunrise dance. I was scared. I was frightened. You're a young girl that just hit puberty and you're a preteen, and all of a sudden everybody's paying attention to you, and you kind of get overwhelmed and want to know, why am I so important right now, or why are we going through all this just for me, kind of thing. But my grandmother, one of our elders, she's probably the eldest living female in our clan, and she came up to me and she explained it. She goes, "This is a ceremony we do for young women because we love them." And, of course, there's family love and there's family love. And then there's, respect and pride of being, part of the ceremony. And she said, we do it because we love you. And we want you to grow into a strong, beautiful woman to become a representation of who we are as a people. And so you can pass on that tradition to your children. And that's how we keep it alive. And I'm listening to MTV and hard rock and heavy metal. I'm 13 and I think I can rule the world. You get kind of humbled about, how much is placed upon your shoulders as a representation of white painted woman itself, So I think that going through the ceremony and having godparents, my godmother, she worked for the social services on the reservation. So everybody knew who she was. And she was a beautiful, beautiful soul. She's still here with me today, 37 years later, she's still, part of my life. And she's always been there. She's been a little bit more gentle of a person than I am. I think I take over my godfather's side, but she's still part of my life. And she's the one that guided me through those scary times. I say scary because it's a lot of information thrown at you, but it's a beautiful time too. My godfather, he's a Vietnam veteran. He was in the special forces. And he, just sitting down and talking to him and realizing that he probably hasn't talked to a lot of people about his experiences. But he tells me, he's like, I'm going to tell you this because you understand. And he'll tell me his war stories. And I'm sitting there in awe, like, I've known this man for almost my whole entire life. And I don't even know half the things he's gone through. But, you're kind of taken back by how resilient he is and how important he is. He's worked for the tribal police, he's worked for council, and he's always been a big, big advocate for the St. Carlos Apache veterans on our reservation. So, my parents did really well when they chose my godparents, and they've always been a big influence in my life. He's been proud of me every step of the way I've been in the military. When I was stationed in Schofield Barracks, he actually nominated me for the St. Claus Apache tribe. And every Veterans Day, of course, it's, Veterans Weekend coming up. Every Veterans Day, we have a big tribal celebration for all our veterans, and we cherish and we honor them. So we have a parade, a carnival, festivities, concerts, and he nominated me for the Grand Marshal. I was kind of surprised and taken back. And this was in 2015, right before I retired. And he said he was proud of me and my service, and he wanted everyone to realize, that I was his goddaughter and that I was a veteran. And I was kind of humbled and honored. I asked if I could bring my husband along with me on the parade because I didn't want to sit in the car by myself and wave at everyone being alone. So he said, no, it's all for the family. So the tribe flew me back from Hawaii. They brought me back to the reservation. We did the parade, and just seeing everybody at the end of the parade, when when you're done at the end stage and everybody's getting off the cars, everybody's having candy, and there was so many people there, and it makes me so proud. But seeing family and knowing that they honored myself and my husband being in the military, it was a very touching moment. Excuse me. And it makes me proud of who I am. And it makes me proud of just having that role model and the influence of having the ceremony done, because these people I wouldn't have known if I didn't have the ceremony. But I don't know, I think our tribe really does well with our veterans. And I'm so happy, so happy and loved to know that they take pride and they honor us. And I think that's why I'm an advocate for Native American History Month in the military, because when the tribal members come home from wherever service they are, the Marines, Navy, Air Force, Army, we always welcome them home. We always, we provide dinners, we provide ceremonies, we provide money funding if they need it. The St. Claus Apache Tribal Veterans Association has been such a big help for everyone. And you'll see a lot of war. We've just down to a mere handful of World War II veterans. These are young boys that were recruited out of boarding schools. And we're down to a few handfuls. We've got many Vietnam veterans, got a Gulf War veterans, and of course now with this military, and we just ended the war in the desert in Iraq and Afghanistan, that we have a lot of veterans do that too. So I'm not the only veteran from my tribe, but being a Grand Marshal for 1 year was spectacular. I loved every minute of it. One thing about the military is that somehow each installation tries to, sponsor a gathering or a powwow or a dinner, something that will celebrate the Native American History Month. And that's where you'll meet your natives at, your fellow tribal members, or even if they're not affiliated with the tribe, they still have that Native history. They've got a grandmother, grandfather down the road that was or just a military, or even just a Native American, and they'll say, I don't know specifically what tribe, but I know I have the Native blood. And I always tell them, just look at your history, do the research, find out who you are, where you're coming from, so that it's something that you can share with your family members. And I always tell them Native Americans in the military are greatly appreciated no matter where they go, whatever tribe member you are. I bring some people back home to my reservations, and they're in awe of how much we do and still have in our traditions and heritage. And a lot of times, a lot of tribes don't have that also.
So I think those are all my questions for now. And I want to thank you for taking the time to sitting down and talking with us. And I know in the service, I don't think I ever really asked, maybe because I didn't know how or all that, but it was just good to hear.
Thank you, Ms. Williams and Ms. Vaughn. I hope you have learned some insight from this informative interview. Today, the spirit and many contributions of American Indians and Alaska Natives continue to enrich our communities and strengthen our country. Thank you for watching.